Hi, this is Mike. I want to take a few minutes with you to go over some of the detail work that you need to do on your big game hides and capes. And sometimes it's easier just to show it in a demo form than it is to describe it in print. And so although I did describe it in print in the field care manual, I want to show you a video of how to do some of this work so you can have a better understanding of how this all happens. We're going to start off at the very beginning here with dealing with bear hides. Now, we're not going to go into the details on fleshing, but one of the first decisions you need to make when you're skinning out your bear is whether or not you're going to do a full body mount, a 3/4 mount, or a rug. And the reason why that's important at the kill site is because if you're doing a rug, you're going to skin out the main pad and you can discard that at the kill site. You don't really need to bring that main pad out with you. The toes definitely stay on the hide, but the pad, it can be discarded at the kill site because most rugs don't use the pads at all, either front or back. So that's a decision you need to make while you're working on your animal at the kill site. So in this situation, what we're going to do is take a look at how to flesh out the pads if you're going to keep them for a 3/4 mount. In that case, it would be just the front paws, of course, or a full body mount, in which case you'll keep front and rear. So in this case, obviously this mount, it's a full standing mount and they kept the front pads intact, and that's what it's going to look like after it's mounted. Okay, we're going to look at some still shots here. This is a small black bear, and this is the front paw, and you can see they've cut around the perimeter of that front pad, and it's kind of flopped over to the side. Let's take another look here. That's what the pad will look like when you get done fleshing it. This is after the toe bones have been removed and all that. And these shots actually were taken in a taxidermy studio in Anchorage. I went down and talked to Russell Knight, and I had his guys show me some of their stuff. So this is a fleshed out front paw on a small black bear. There's still a little bit of fat here that could be trimmed off, but this is about what it should look like when you get done with it in the field. Now, if your taxidermist is going to take care of these for you, then obviously you're not going to worry about that. But if you're going to have this hide out in the field for very long, you're going to want to go in and flesh it out just like you see here. So what this guy did was he cut all the way around the perimeter of the front pad and laid it over to one side, and then he scraped out all the fat and all the tissue between the pad and inside the foot there. All right, this is a smaller grizzly, and in this case, just to open it up, the skinner went ahead and made a cut right down the middle of the pad. I don't recommend doing that as a general rule if you're going to be keeping these pads, but if you're discarding it in the field, it's a non-issue. Some guys will leave these pads attached, by the way, until they get to the taxidermist so they can make a decision once they get out there. And that's always a good idea to sort of hedge your bets a little bit if you're not sure whether you're going to go 3/4 life size or a rug. If you have the pads, you can you've got all of those options, but if you cut them off in the field, then of course you're doing a rug. So in this case, they made the split down the middle of the pad. I don't recommend doing that in the field. If you do that, this is what you're going to get when you open it up. It's a little bit easier to open it up and get to all the tissue, but again, if you're going to keep that pad, it's going to be easier for your taxidermist if you leave it all in one piece. All right, this is that same black bear that we looked at earlier, but this is the hind foot, and you can see what that main pad would look like before it's peeled back all the way, and that's what it looks like when it's laid back. And you can see there's quite a bit of fat here still on the main pad. As long as it's salted really good, that should be okay. I'm pretty detailed about this stuff, so that would irritate me to no end to leave that much fat on a pad, but obviously it works. This is nice and dry, and it's going to work out just fine. You can see some thin spots on the hide here where you can see the roots of the hair. I don't like to trim that close when I'm in the field because if you cut through those hair roots, the hair can slip in those areas. So just be careful when you're doing that. When I came into the shop and watched these guys, they were actually using a fleshing machine, which is kind of like a, what would you say? not a sander, but maybe like a planer, a small planer, and it trims off very thin layers of material. But you can also go too far with those fleshing tools. So obviously in the field, you're not going to be doing that. I'm just bringing it up to show what happens if you cut too close to the hair roots. All right, let's talk for a minute about lips. If you're doing a rug mount or a full-bodied or even a 3/4, you're going to have to turn the lips or split the lips. And this is the lips on a small bear hide, and they've already been turned. They're all laid out flat. That yellowish spot that you see, that strip around the rim there, that's the inside of the lips. The edge of that is where it would attach to the gum line. So this has been laid out nice and flat. And that's what you want to do in the field. I don't have any video of splitting the lips, but if you can picture, for lack of a better term, if you had like a beef steak sitting there and it was a thick one, you could cut into that steak from the side and fillet that thing. Basically, you're butterflying the steak. That's exactly what you're doing with lips. You're going to butterfly those lips so they lay open nice and flat, and then you're going to trim all that extra flesh off of them. This is what it looks like from the inside. And it's kind of hard to tell what you're looking at here, but the point is you want to get those lips as thin as you can. Definitely no more than a 1/2 inch, even thinner than that on the smaller animals. Okay, next up we're going to talk about turning ears, and I've got some video on this, so I think this will be pretty interesting. We'll go ahead and jump into that right now. Okay, this guy is turning the ear on a caribou cape, and you can see what he's doing. He's using a Havilon knife, by the way. Those are the razor knives that you can use out in the field. I haven't seen this particular model of Havilon. I like the ones that I've been using out in the field because the blade folds up into the handle, and I don't have to worry about sharp edges out there in my pack or what have you. In any case, you can change the blades out on all of these, so when they get dull, you're still good to go. But you can see he's holding that knife like a ballpoint pen, and he's got really good control of the knife. He's working right against where the cartilage runs up against the back of the ear, and you can see that line as he's working along here. He's just running his knife right in that line, right in the seam between the dark color that's the back side of the ear and the white color, which is the cartilage in the ear itself. All right, let's jump up to the next piece here, and we'll look at some more detail here. Now we're getting about halfway down the ear, and it's a lot easier to see the line between the cartilage and the back of the ear. The back of the ear is that dark color towards the top of the frame. The light color is the ear cartilage itself. And you want to just follow that seam. He's working this ear over a post, and I will take a look at that again here in a second. Okay, we're getting, again, close towards the end of the ear. That dark spot that you see there right in the middle of the frame, that's a split in the ear. That happens very commonly with antlered game. The bulls will get to fighting, and their ear will get hooked by an antler tine while they're fighting, and it'll get a split in it. So you get those pretty commonly on moose and caribou. Don't worry too much if that split opens up, and you'll see here there's a little bit of hair poking through there right by his thumb. Not a big deal. I like to leave those splits intact when I'm working on my ears because I think it gives the mount a little bit more character. But it's up to you whether you want the taxidermist to close that up. Now we're getting close towards the end of the ear. We're basically just turning the ear inside out. That's the whole idea here. You're not going to remove the cartilage. You're just going to leave it attached on the inside of the ear, but you're skinning it out along the back side of the ear. And while you're in the field, you'll leave that whole thing inside out so you can salt it. You can see in this case, obviously the hunter did not turn his ears out in the field, and so we're getting clear fluid between the ear and the cartilage. You can see a little bit of that, kind of that sheen there. And if you're not careful and you wait too long to turn your ears, that clear fluid will go rancid, and eventually the hair will slip on the ears. So you don't want that to happen. That's why I always turn my ears out in the field. Okay, we're getting close towards the end of the ear. I'm going to go ahead and jump to another little video piece, and we'll show you what to look for so you know to tell you how you know when it's done. Okay, we're really close to the tip of the ear, And it's very common to cut through the cartilage here. That's not a big deal. You can see those little nicks through the cartilage. Cartilage gets really thin down here on the end. And then what you want to do is inspect the ear after you've turned it. You're going to go all the way around the perimeter of it and make sure you've got clear to the end of the cartilage. And you can see there'll be a little indentation at the end of the cartilage. That's how you know you're at the end of it. There's that hole in the middle that we saw. It's underneath his thumb now. But anyway, that gives you the idea on an ear. I started to mention earlier that you want to work that ear over a stick or a post of some kind. I find that it works really well to get a willow limb and jam it into the ground and then use that as a post and have that about waist high while I'm sitting. That way I'm not hunkered over or bent over and straining my neck and all that. You want to get it up nice and high so it's in front of you. If you don't have a stick that's that long, but you have a chair, a camp stool or something, you can brace that stick in your crotch against the base of the chair and work it that way. But either way, you've got to have some kind of a stick in that ear. What I'll do is I'll use about a 1-inch diameter willow limb and I'll bevel it at a 45-degree angle. So I have a nice rounded edge on that willow limb to shove up in that ear and help me get the cartilage separated out. Okay, now we're going to take a look at another ear. This is on a wolf hide, and it's quite a bit smaller. You can see here, same exact procedure. We're going to go start in at the base, and we're going to try to locate the edge of that cartilage. And what he's doing here is he's just working against the dark part of the hide and the cartilage itself. And as you get in, you'll see that cartilage, it'll be white, and it'll be a really easy to follow line. At the beginning, it's a little bit tough, so just feel your way through, and you'll find that cartilage as you get closer towards the ear. And again, you're skinning the back of the ear, not the inside. You don't want to do anything on the inside. It's a lot tougher to work with that. There's a lot of connective tissue down here at the base. The cartilage is actually kind of two pieces. You see that lump that he's got his thumb on there? That's actually a piece that can be removed later on. Sometimes people will remove that chunk of cartilage in the field. I don't necessarily recommend doing that because if you don't know exactly what the taxidermist is going to need, you're better off leaving a little bit more of it attached. And it's opened up anyway, so it's not going to hurt anything because you're going to salt that really good. So it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of cartilage hanging out there that is not necessary. You want to let your taxidermist trim that. Okay, now he's working over his post here, and you can see how that cartilage is becoming a lot more visible. And you can see the edge of the hide very clearly where he's running his knife blade along that seam there. There we go, right in there. So that's what you want. You want to look for that cartilage and just work your knife blade along there really cleanly and smoothly. Don't worry if you cut through the cartilage a little bit now and then. Try not to. If you cut through the back of the ear, that's not a deal breaker either. On most North American game, the ear hair is fairly thick, and so if they have to stitch the back of the ear closed, it'll hide that stitching. But I try to be really careful in these areas and not make any cuts through the hide. So most people that have never done it before, they're going to make mistakes at the beginning, but just take your time. This guy is very experienced. You can see he's working pretty quickly, and I don't expect that most of us are going to be able to turn ears quite that fast. So that you're going to want to do those ears in the field, though. So that gives you an idea what to look for. Now he's getting down towards the end of the ear here. We're not going to go all the way through this, but you've got the idea. You're going to continue following that cartilage line all the way out until that ear is totally opened up. And then once that ear is opened and you've completed the rest of your fleshing, then you're going to go ahead and salt this whole thing. You're going to leave it turned inside out just like it is here. You don't want to fold it back into itself. Just leave it turned inside out through the drying process until you get it to your taxidermist, then let them deal with it. If you don't get all the way out to the edge of the ear, one of the problems that you can run into is the hair can slip. And so you'll have the top edge of the ear with no hair on it. So you want to be really careful about that you get all the way to the end of that cartilage. All right, let's jump to the next slide. Okay, this is that same wolf, and we're turning the nose. Unfortunately, I don't have a moose nose on here or a caribou nose. which is what most of you guys are going to be dealing with. But the principles are the same. Basically, what you're going to do is skin around the nose. And you're doing the same thing you did on the ears. You're turning that nose inside out. You're looking for that cartilage around the perimeter of the nose. But the difference with a nose is there's a cartilage that divides the left and right nostril, and that cartilage is called a septum. And what you want to do is run your knife right down the middle of that septum and split it so you can open that nose all the way up. And we won't go all the way through this video clip, but you get the idea. You're just working around the perimeter of the nose, and then you're going to split that cartilage in the center. A moose nose is much more complex, and so it's going to take a lot longer to turn a moose's nose than it would a small carnivore like a wolf. Okay, this is what that nose will look like after it's turned and salted. This is a caribou nose, and you can see they've split right through the center of that cartilage, and they've got that whole nose opened up, so you've got it in two pieces. Here's a little bit better view from a different angle. So on each side, that cartilage that you see is the nose cartilage turned inside out. What you're going to do at this point is complete your fleshing, get any fat off of there. I see a little bit of fat up to the top of the slide there. You can see some little cuts through it. I'd like to see that trimmed off a little bit more closely, but obviously this is in the taxidermy studio already, and it's pretty dry, and it seems to be working out just fine. I like to clean mine up pretty good. All right, let's take a look at an eyelid. This is also from a caribou. I don't have any video of turning this eyelid, but you're going to do it the same way you split the lips. You're basically going to butterfly that eyelid muscle until it lays out really flat. If you're not sure how to do this, and you're only going to be in the field with your cape about 4 or 5 days, you can probably get by without splitting the eyelids. So just be careful. If you know how to do it and you don't mind tackling it, the idea is to get that eyelid as thin as possible. And you can see all of that tissue north of his thumb, that was all laying back flat against the hide. So what he did is he filleted it all off the hide and just opened it up, and it turns into a big long tube. So that's the deal on the eyelids. Now, if you're doing a life-size mount on a moose or a caribou, or in this case a bison, you're going to need to keep those hooves. And so this will all happen out at the kill site. You're not going to bring the hide back in from the field with the hooves still in it, unless you have just a really short amount of time that it's going to be in the field. So here what we've done is we've opened up the skin on the lower leg along the back side, and we're just turning that leg skin inside out. We're following the bone all the way out to the hoof. What you'll see here is there are two tendons that lay alongside that leg bone, and you're going to, each of those tendons go into a dew claw. So you'll see that in a little bit here. There's tendons that lay along the side. They end up right in the dew claw, and those tendons are what controls the dew claw when the animal is alive. So here what we're doing is we're on the back side of that last knuckle just above the hoof, and we're skinning the hide out there. And you can see here it's kind of the same deal we saw with the ears. You're going to follow that seam between the hide and the bone and the cartilage. It's a little bit harder to see the color difference here, but you can see there is a subtle color change with the backside of the hide. Now this hide is really thick because it's a bison, not nearly as thin as that smaller bear hide that we saw, or even the wolf or caribou that we looked at earlier. So you're not going to get that color transfer to the inside of the hide as easily. Now what's happening in this area is he's coming to the end of the leg bone. He's going to cut right through that knuckle, and he's going to discard that piece of bone there. Below that knuckle, the bone splits into two pieces, and each of those pieces go into each one of the two hooves. Remember, bison and moose and caribou have split hooves, not like a cow where it's all just one, or not like a horse where it's one hoof. So that split, each of those two bones that you can see to the left there, they go into their own hoof. So that's where the split happens, is just below this joint. What he's doing here is he's just getting that cartilage loose. I don't recommend trying to do this with your Havilon. He's going to do some fine detail work with the Havilon, but for the prying, you're going to need a heavier knife or you're going to break your blade in here. So now it's opened right up, and he's just following those seams, and he's going to have that leg bone free. There we go. And those two tendons that you see there at the bottom, those are going into the dew claws. So there's that lower leg bone. Now what some people will do is they'll use a meat hook, and they'll hook it into the cartilage on that lower leg, and they'll hang the meat hook in a tree, and they'll pull down against it instead of having to push against a surface like this. Here he's got a nice table to work on. You're not going to have that out in the field. So a meat hook can be a real handy thing because it gives you a leverage point to pull against. And you can just do that up in the tree. Here he's just putting a little bit of sawdust on here to increase his grip. You could use salt if you needed to. You're going to turn these hooves at the... you don't have to do it in camp. You can, or at the kill site. You can do it in camp if you want to leave them in there, if you don't mind packing the extra weight when you're packing off the kill site. What happens a lot of times is this detail work, splitting the lips, turning the eyelids, the nose, and removing the toe bones on bears and removing the hoof bones on ungulates, that work usually happens in camp. You don't necessarily have to do it at the kill site. I think I said at the kill site earlier. I've done it both ways, but usually what happens at the kill site is you're in a hurry to get that meat back to camp and start taking care of it. And so while your partner is working on that, you can be doing this detail work. Here you can see he's working on one of those toe bones. There's two of them. He's got one of them in his hand right now. He's just scraping it out of the hoof there. He's got a lot of cutting to do. One thing you've got to be careful of is where the hide joins onto the top of the hoof. It gets kind of thin right in there, and you can cut through that if you're not careful. It doesn't show this on the video, but once you get these two toe bones out, why then you're going to have fat in that hoof, and you're going to want to trim that out of there. There's a couple of ways to do it, but the Havilon works really well. You can just dig around in there and get all those chunks of fat out of that hoof area. So this is what you're going to be looking at. Moose and caribou are exactly the same as this bison. Deer are going to be the same. It's just a question of scale as far as the difference in size between them all. But this is what you're going to be doing if you're going to leave the hooves in your ungulate hide. Let's go ahead and keep watching this till he gets that first toe bone out, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, he's got a little bit of cartilage here he's got to cut through. And you can see it's quite a bit of work. Even with a guy that knows what he's doing, he knows where everything is. Chances are if you've not done it before, you're going to have a little bit of struggle here. And you can see how much easier it is now that he got that lower leg off. He can separate those two bones and really get in there and sever all that cartilage that connects it in. Okay, it's just about free there. A little bit of detail work with the Havilon, and there he goes. Okay, now he's got that last toe bone in. We're not going to finish that one out, but you can see down inside that hoof socket, there's still some tissue in there that can cause the hair to slip if it doesn't get thin. So you're going to want to get in there and clean that out. And then after you're done with all the fleshing, you're going to pack those hooves with salt. Make sure you pack them really good with plenty of salt. In the book, I talked about reusing your salt. A lot of taxidermy studios will reuse the same salt over and over and over again. So if you're tight on weight flying out to the field, go ahead and reuse that salt on your second animal. And you can leave that salt. We usually just leave it overnight, but you can leave it in there for 24 hours if you want. Leave it in that first salting before you roll it out and give it that second salting. But save that first salt because you can use it on your next animal. All right, that's a wrap on the detail work on capes and hides, and I'll go ahead and cut it off here.